Welcome back to Mayday. I am your host, Trevor May, 10-year Major League vet, and this is the show where I get to rant about everything baseball related and sometimes about the sports world beyond. Today's show, we have 4 topics as opposed to the normal 3. We're going to start with how parks are actually affecting how far homers go. We'll talk about Peter Bendix and his comments about the trade of Luis Arias earlier this week to San Diego. I have 5 relievers that I don't think are being talked about enough, and we will close out the show by discussing baseball's newest epidemic, catcher interference. Welcome back to the show. I apologize for the delay between the last 2 episodes. Like I said, once a week I think would be an awesome goal to look for or aim towards, but if I can mix in 2, that would be awesome. And here I am, like 10 days after the last one. So I'm working on it. I'm getting in the flow. I'm finding out how we're going to do scheduling and things here. So expect more in the future. Our first topic today, it was just interesting. It was a conversation that I had with some other guys in the baseball world, and I wanted to share it with you. There is a very famous home run that was hit in Fenway Park by Ted Williams that was clocked at 502 feet in distance. This may sound familiar to you because there is a red seat, a seat that has been painted red up in the right field stands to signify where this home run landed. And I think a popular, mindset when these things are claimed is that like, oh, that's urban myth. There's no way someone from the 40s hit a home run, 500 feet, but no one's hit a home run that far. Since in that park, it's unanimously accepted that players are bigger and stronger and can hit the ball farther now. But it turns out that measurement was actually pretty accurate. It did hit that seat, but how? How could a player back in that time, during the dead ball era, hit a home run farther than anyone can hit it now, especially with how balls have changed in order to help with offense? And the answer to that question is the baseball park and wind. Yes, wind is real. Even though you can't see it, it's a real thing. And it has a big impact on how baseballs move. There's actually a company called WAM, W-A-M, Weather Advanced Metrics or Weather something metrics. Should probably know the name of this. But what they do is they map stadiums and they know generally how weather patterns are moving in very small samples of space within a stadium. So like they can tell you how the wind's going to be different at the mound, between the mound and home plate versus like the right field stands versus left field stands. And every park is different. And one of the interesting things about Fenway Park that might explain why the farthest homer hit since then is by Tristan Casas, and it's almost 10 feet shorter, is because the press box exists. Back when Ted hit this home run, there was no press box. The classic Fenway press box that sits there now, there was about 20 less feet of blockage for the wind going from to the west over the stadium. So that basically jet stream, there's a solid wind that is constantly blowing from the left field foul line out to right, generally in that area. And the press box now blocks a lot of it. So you have to get the ball up very, very, very high, higher than most guys can hit it in order to get it far enough. It's higher of a launch angle to get into that quote unquote jet stream. It's very interesting that something like that could affect ball flight this much to where no one can break that record. But it turns out this seems to be happening in other places. There was recent renovations in Progressive Field in Cleveland, where they removed some obstructions in the right field gate in order to give more of a view of the city, which seems to have opened up a little bit of the airflow. When you play in a place like, for example, Target Field, where I played a long time, it feels like you're playing in a hole. Like you're in down deep into a hole. And when air comes from the top of a hole and then goes down into it, if you were to be, for example, if you were to be in like a well with no water in it, then then the air would swirl in there and you would feel you wouldn't be able to feel any direction. And that works generally the same thing in a baseball field because it's not big enough to allow for wind to pick up momentum going one way or the other. So a lot of times it swirls, but if you add gaps in the outfield fence, then the air tends to escape there. All these things, we're not going to do a weather lesson today, but if you remove an area of the stadium, sometimes that can be advantageous, or vice versa, create a wind pattern that goes one way or the other. There's actually a story about how in Minneapolis during the Metrodome, because it was kind of a sterile air situation, but they had a gate right behind home plate, and sometimes they've been accused of opening those doors from the outside going inside only when the Twins are hitting, because there is a kind of a vacuum situation when air is filling this vacuum and gusting into the stadium, and that direction happens to be towards the outfield fence. That was been something that I've heard before. I can't verify whether or not it really happened, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if that was one way that they found they were able to get an advantage. And these things are everywhere. In PNC Park, for example, in the right center is called the jet stream, through that gap that goes to Allegheny, where you can see most of the skyline. If you hit it to that area, even though it is the biggest part of the park, the ball tends to carry the farthest. Back to Progressive Field, they removed this area, and that field went from 27th in ballpark factor to 3rd year to year. Last year was 27th. It was wildly advantageous to pitching, and now it is the 3rd best hitters park in the league so far. Now, it's hard to tell how much of that had to do with the park changing itself, but you can't ignore the fact that a 24-spot jump happened when you made these changes. Conversely, moving the left field fence out farther in Baltimore completely changed their park factor. It has become much more fair of a place. It used to be an absolute bang box, as we call it. But it's funny, to right field, because of the factors I just mentioned, the ball still carries pretty well. So it's like lefties can yank the ball a little bit better than righties could yank the ball when it used to be both. So it is so interesting how just moving an obstruction or adding a building to the outside of the stadium even can block some weather patterns or some wind patterns that either hurt or help the ball to move. And it is a real thing. But I just thought I'd share that story about Ted Williams, that it is entirely possible that he hit a 500-foot home run and no one else is going to be able to do it because of the changes to Fenway and the way that the wind moves now versus when he played. That just it's possible that's it, and that's possible that a lot of these numbers we have for these massive mammoth home runs from old baseball times are actually much more accurate than we think. But the way their stadiums were built back then is actually the biggest reason for that. Guys, I have a confession. Over my years of playing baseball, I developed a very weird relationship with caffeine. In order to just get through my days, it was definitely one of those situations where you make the decision now and then ask your body for forgiveness later. This is something to the tune of almost 1,000 milligrams of caffeine sometimes, and you just had to find that energy somewhere. Well, I have recently tried to taper that back, and I have done a good job of it for the first time in my life with something called Focus Fuel, a delicious candy caffeine supplement that comes in 3 delicious flavors and only 50 milligrams caffeine per piece, so that I can monitor how much I am taking every single day. I'm trying to cut out coffee. I'm trying to cut out drinks. I love to have a drink in front of me. I'm one of those people with 3 drinks on his desk at all times. But I want to make sure I know how much caffeine is going into my body. In addition to the caffeine, there's only 2 grams of sugar per piece. It comes with a natural Focus Fuel blend with alpha GPC, lion's mane, ashwagandha. I love saying that wrong every time, so I'm leaving that in. And it's got all these great ingredients that allow you to have a soft landing when that energy runs out, as opposed to that crazy crash you get from an energy drink. On top of all that, you can take this everywhere you can't take drinks, into concerts, onto flights. I'm someone who has to travel a lot, so I always have some of these with me as well. And just getting a little 50 milligram boost It's so much easier to do when it's one piece, it's one serving, and you don't have to guess how many ounces of liquid you're drinking. So check it out. That's at thefocusfuel.com. Use code BASEBALL, that is baseball, all lowercase, at checkout, and you will get 10% off of your order. All three flavors are delicious. That's electric blue raspberry, that's tropical fruit punch, and that is electric watermelon. Thefocusfuel.com, code BASEBALL for 10% off your order. Okay, back to the show. Next, let's talk about the Marlins and what the hell they're doing. Now, I was loud about their inability to sign anybody to a free agent contract this offseason. Honestly, it's funny. The one guy they did, Tim Anderson, he actually declined their first deal, and that fell apart for a bit. He literally said no once, and then eventually they got to a place where he, either got a sweeter deal, a better situation, or he just realized that it was going to be his only opportunity. I don't know exactly which one it was, but he ended up going there as well. None of those things screamed, we're going back to the playoffs this year. I'm going to say one big thing. People have been talking a lot about this. A lot of colleagues in this space have been mentioning it as well, that, you made the playoffs last year. Why are you tearing it down? Like, you made the playoffs in 2020. Why are you tearing it down? They made the playoffs both times despite their leadership, not because of it. Neither one of those things were like sustainable built teams. They were driven by really high quality pitching performances from young guys, maybe even getting better performances than they anticipated. And then guys like Jorge Soler hitting a bunch of home runs in a place where it's really hard to hit home runs, scoring just enough runs and then sneaking in a league that the last two wildcard spots were kind of just open. And also you add in the fact that there's now 12 playoff teams. That's how they made the playoffs last year. And in 2020, they made the playoffs because there were 60 games. They were 500. They were barely over 500 last year. This is not a sustainable playoff team situation. And I agree with Peter Bendix when he says that. Speaking of Peter Bendix, he made some comments, and you know what? I thought I'd just share him here and we can hear what he has to say.
We got an offer that we felt like we couldn't walk past for the long-term benefit of the organization. The team's record is what it is right now. We're very disappointed. I know the players are very disappointed. Everybody here is very disappointed about that, but it is also something that we can't change right now. And when we got this offer on Luis for a tremendous amount of young talent that we really think is going to be very helpful for us long term, it was just something we couldn't walk past. It was the type of deal that we were worried wasn't going to be there if we waited, and we decided to pull the trigger on it now. It's part of the calculation of the value of the player for the rest of the season, when unfortunately our record is what it is, and the fact is that we're unlikely to make the playoffs this year, and trading that for future value seems like the right thing for this organization right now. The difficulty of a trade like this is magnified when it happens so early in the season. And Luis is such a great baseball player, but he's an even better human, teammate, person in the clubhouse. All of those things just serve to make this an even more difficult deal. The message is to continue to work hard, and there's a lot of baseball left. And that is something that is felt inside this clubhouse. There's a bunch of professionals here. The players, the staff, everybody involved with this organization, they're tremendous professionals. They're going to work as hard as they can to put the players in position to succeed. Players are going to work as hard as they can to win games, fully expect that we're going to improve our record moving forward. And that's something that's going to be unchanged regardless of this trade. We have one eye on the future, one eye on the present, and our goal remains to build towards long-term sustainable success.
Now, a lot of people have really strong opinions about Peter's comments here, but it's weird. I have a little bit of a different feeling, and I understand a lot of the frustration. Like, hearing stuff like this is just like terrible. There's a lot of guys around the league here that don't seem like they don't have great bedside manners. Jerry Dipoto with the 54% goal, which is like the most. Like, fans just simply don't think that way, and it's cool if you do think that, and it is candid. But what we don't want is for this to feel more like a business, not less. Like, fans don't care about the business. They don't care. They don't care what you have to tell your boss in order to keep your job. They just don't care. Like people don't care about the players' excuses for why they're not good or bad either. Not truly. They're interested, but they don't actually care. At the end of the day, they just want it done. They want to be excited. They want to enjoy it, and they don't want to have to think about how you are making decisions about equations and things. And Bendix had a little bit of that same kind of, hey guys, like we weren't gonna make the playoffs, so screw it. We're done. Like we're done hoping and crossing our fingers here, which is true, but Marlins fans are like, hey, like we've heard this for the entire life of this franchise. We've heard this all the time. We hear this constantly. Like the last 2 times they made the playoffs, the leader of their development, their director of baseball operations, like is either fired or quit. Michael Hill lost his job after 2020, and then Kimming left because she wasn't going to be promoted, and there was going to be someone else comes in who has a job above her, which I would also not be happy about either. But there's got to be something happening because Jeter left. Like they just have people leave all the time, and there's got to be some sort of. It must be not the best place to get a little bit of continuity in trying to get your plan executed. And at the end of the day, you have to have a plan, and that is one thing that I will respect about Peter is that he is pretty clear about, hey, this is how we're going to have to do this. And we have never done anything like this, namely work like the Rays. If you guys don't want to spend money and really go get big guys, then there's a certain way you have to do it to get the highest quality, and you have to have a really good philosophy on how you win games. And he's trying to change that philosophy and how you win games. And once you figure out what the philosophy is, then you have to create an organization that executes that philosophy well. And that takes a certain type of player, right? And so you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere, and sometimes you got to be like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And trading Arias, I think, was the first domino in that, in that direction. I think getting rid of him, like he's as high of a value as he's going to have. And getting 4 prospects, even if none of them are very highly touted. And that is one thing, like he's the type of guy that you should probably get a highly touted prospect out of the deal. But at this point, it's like, hey, we need to add guys that could pan out, and we need to find something that is going to add value to this organization moving forward. And not only when it does add value and we do see success, that success is sustainable and involves a lot of guys coming up and overlapping of stars, and your core continues to expand, kind of like the Astros. You want the Astros situation. And so to start here and say, hey, we're not making the playoffs this year, I think everyone agrees with that. It's weird to say it right now, but yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs. I just don't think they can score any runs, which they can't. I think we've seen that they cannot score very many runs. So until that happens, they're just not going to be who they want to be. Yeah, they have great pitching. That's all hurt. Doesn't help that everyone's hurt. I think that would change things a little bit, but they were fully relying on their pitching, and then all of their pitchers got hurt. And here we are. And it's a tear down. We're not gonna compete. We're gonna trade our guys. So I can't fault. Like at some point, you have to be like, let's get rid of all this crap, all this stuff that has made us the way we are for the whole time this organization has existed, and let's actually make real change, and let's do this thing for real, and let's stop doing it halfway. And I get that vibe. That's the vibe I'm getting for Peter. And at least it sounds like there's a plan, or we're breaking it down because we want to have a plan, and I can at least respect that. But I do feel bad for Marlins fans, but I do feel good for San Diego fans because Luis Arias is a huge add to that team. He's going to be getting on base. They're missing that part of Soto's game, but he's not one of those superstars, too many cooks in the kitchen situation where he's going to be taking away, attention from the Mannies and attention from the Tatises and attention from the Bogarts. And he's versatile enough that he can play first base, second base, and DH. And he's a great hitter. And he doesn't seem to be affected by DHing versus playing in the field. He back-to-back batting title. I think any team would be happy to have him. And you have boppers behind him. That puts them one step closer to competing a little bit better, in my opinion. One other very important factor that I need to mention before I move on is the effect that this type of public announcement, this public statement has on a clubhouse that is currently down there trying to win games on a regular basis. They still have a bunch of young guys. They have Sandy Alcantara, who they're hoping anchors their staff into the future. They got a bunch of other young guys who are going to be there. By all intents and purposes, a lot of the guys who are there are going to be part of this core moving forward that needs to be winning or thinking about winning or learning how to win. I am a huge proponent of the idea that the difference in talent around the league, like the worst talent versus the best talent, is not as big of a gap as you think in baseball, because guys, this gap can not even exist some days. Like the worst guys can just be the best guy on the field sometimes. And I feel like that's something that is not, real in any other sport but baseball. I feel like it's universally pretty unique. And like, you kind of just threw them under the bus a little bit, or kind of don't feel like you're supporting them. And I know I've been in a really, really bad team's clubhouses before. And, you want to win. You want to be part of the team. You want to be part of that plan moving forward, and it's really hard collectively if you don't have really good, clear philosophy and direction and clear, path forward. They don't even know who their manager is going to be. They voided Skip Schumacher's contract, so they not only added, "Hey guys, we're kind of giving up on you this year," they also added a bunch of uncertainty for the near future, and it's hard to commit to a style, to a philosophy, to like yourself getting better if you don't feel like that organization is going to be the place that you become your best version, or that they have your back and putting you in the best position to win now. So I really hope, for the guy's sake, that this kind of step back turns into like a higher energy than a lower energy. It's very easy to come into the clubhouse every day, assume you're going to lose, and then there becomes kind of a complacency, kind of going through the motions, a lackadaisicalness, if that's even a word. And that's something that they're going to have to battle, and they're going to have to look around and be like, "Oh, what's the worst going to happen? We're going to lose." Like this is an insidious mindset that can really take away from your ability to compete, and you have to stay in that place in order to continue to improve. So 4 months down the road, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, these guys are morphing into the players that they can be, stars around the league, guys that can go toe-to-toe with anybody at any time, and that is how you win a championship. And that culture needs to be fostered simultaneously while you rebuild in a real way. So I think the way they do this is, I hope Peter uses the same candidness and the same openness with his players and with the people involved, so that they can have these conversations as well. So if a player comes and be like, "Dude, what's the plan here? Like, what do you need from me to make us better and myself better?" And for that to be an open conversation needs to happen, or this is still going to continue being the way that it is. I don't know if having 400 owners is helping at all, because you can't even get the opinions of those guys, but they also have that going behind the scenes, and I bet you that has something to do with it. But the players got to find a way to grind, and sometimes they might just need to do something like they have been doing, and doing things in spite of the people making decisions as opposed to alongside them. If that's where you have to get motivation here in the short term, then that is where you get motivation. But I really hope that culture gets a shift, and this openness continues at all levels. I think that's their only way to do this thing successfully and move forward with an organization that consistently wins. And now for a new segment that I'm actually very excited to do. I think that it's been a long time coming. I've been watching these guys. I've been keeping a lot of notes now, and I think that this is one way that I can give back and shout out the people that were like me when I played. And that is relievers that most of the time aren't closers, that are not getting the attention that I think they deserve, and are on the cusp, or are showing things that could mean that they are going to be an elite arm moving forward in more of a pen role. And some of these guys have been around, some of them are new, but here's my top 5 relievers that I don't think are being talked about enough right now. First up, we have Luke Weaver, currently with the New York Yankees, who has been moved to the pen after starting for the last 9 years with the Reds. He bounced around all over the place last year, ending with the Mariners, trying to get starting jobs. He was hurt a little bit. Things just weren't really coming together for him as a starter. He's always had good stuff, but with a career ERA over 5, he hasn't really found a lot of continuity in order to kind of have his career take off. But this year's a little different. moved into that reliever role. His velo has increased. He is in the top quarter of the league in fastball velo, averaging 95 miles an hour. He has added a little velo to his power changeup, which he's thrown 25% of the time and locating extremely well. It's got elite arm side run. It's a little bit of a seam shifted wake type of thing, so he gets a ton of movement on it. And that combined with his cutter that he is dotting up and into lefties, he's been a really effective pitcher this year. He has a career 506, but this year he's got a 2.68 in 12 games, 22 innings pitched, 21 strikeouts, and a .73 whip. That is a big deal, especially in that park. He has a 1.4 whip for his career, so half the whip that he's had for his career, and that's what tells me this might be a little bit sustainable. He's throwing more in a multi-inning kind of long guy situation. But the other day I watched him throwing against I believe it was the Orioles, and just pump and chatter, like throwing 97, 98, throwing that hard changeup at 90, and mixing in the cutter a little bit to get guys off of it. Now, if he only had a power slider for a swing and miss, I think he would be, a candidate for being a really good fireman for this year and get that strikeout rate up a little bit. But so far, so good for Luke Weaver. Next, another guy named Lucas Erceg of the Oakland Athletics. Now, if you don't count, and this is a classic thing to do with relievers, if you don't count the last outing where he gave up a 3-run homer up 2-0 to Corey Seager, where he just kind of got a little bit of erratic, which you're going to see is something he struggles with a little bit from time to time. This guy's arm is absolutely electric, and he has been setting up for Mason Miller, who arguably might have the best stuff in the major leagues right now as at a closer. And I would have included him in this list if everyone wasn't talking about him already, but no one's really mentioning Lucas Erceg. So going in, he's got a 3.6 right now, but it was like a 1.7 at that point, or 1.6. In 15 innings, he struck out 22 guys. He has a 1.27 whip. So again, walks are a little bit of a struggle for him sometimes. Throwing ball 4 was something he struggled with last year a little bit too, but he is a converted third baseman. He's only been a pitcher for a couple years now, and so that's only going to get better. But the interesting thing is these savant stats. He is 99th percentile in fastball velo, averaging 98.6. He's in the 81st percentile in expected batting average. He's got a 34% whiff rate, a 34.4% K rate, both top 5% in the league. The only thing he is lower than average on is walk rate, which is pretty common throughout the league. Even barrel rate's he's top half of the league, which is great because he's a heavy sinker guy, but it's that hard 98 to 100 sinker with this really good power changeup that is his big whiff pitch, and his slider is getting better. But he has been throwing, and it actually turns out he's been throwing his four seam even more too. So he's a heavy four seam sinker, but only about half of the time, and then 30% changeup, and it's a true power changeup that runs hard. He throws at low 90s and gets those hard swings and misses. He gets that hard downward movement, and he's just got really great stuff. It just comes down to, can you get ahead of guys, and then can you avoid that big swing? And he's got the type of stuff where he can avoid those home runs if he just keeps the ball down. So as his command improves, he's only going to get better. Number 3 on this list is a Mariner, Gabe Spire, a lefty, 29 years old, and here's the kind of stats he's putting up this year. He's got a 2.3 ERA in 14 games, an 11.2 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts, and a 1.11 whip. Now, the whip isn't the best. I mean, 1.1's nothing, but it was much lower than that. He's had a clunker recently too, and the biggest things he struggles with is walks as well. He's in the 18th percentile in walks, but everything else is phenomenal. Oh, that and velo. Not a super hard thrower, averages 93, but average exit velo, chase percent, whiff percent, K percent, X batting average, and X ERA, all top 15% of the league. Hard hit percent, 95th percentile. That is incredible. Only 26% of the balls put in play are hit hard, and he's been doing it with that classic lefty sinker slider combination. He's been using the slider really, really well for strikes and then going below the zone with it. He stays over the plate, and he's gotten some really big outs for the Mariners, but he is especially hard on lefties, which is what they use him as. You usually know that when you have 14 appearances and less innings than appearances. You're usually a specialty guy, but Gabe Spire's been throwing really well, and I think he should get a shout-out. Number 4 on my list, Jacob Webb of the Baltimore Orioles. Jacob Webb's been around for a while. He's got a career 2.8 ERA. He's been good off and on, but the last couple of years, he's kind of hung around in the high threes, low fours, solid quality pitcher, but he has not had a year like he's having this year quite yet. With a 1.76 ERA, 17 games, 15.1 innings pitched, 19 strikeouts, and a .9 whip. He's top 10% whiff rate, top 10% in K rate, top 35% in expected ERA, and top third of the league in average exit velo. He's getting soft contact, and he's about average in walk and hard hit. So these are things I look at to see if they'll be sustainable. The one thing he's not great at, he doesn't throw super hard, but he has a really great sweeper changeup situation going. Very similar to the guy we talked about last time, Reed Garrett. He's got a heavy fading changeup that is also seam shifted, and it runs quite a bit. And then this big, crazy sweeper. His sweeper is very good. It's just sometimes not competitive because that's what sweepers are, but he's been using that combination well and using the fastball 42% of the time and using it effectively. So he's done a great job. He's been more of a fireman situation. He's done a lot of work like in a tie game and extra innings and done a good job. And I think that he was a very good pickup for them. And their use of him has been maximized. I think he's having a really good year, and he's a guy that you should pay attention to moving forward because it seems like this could be something that is pretty sustainable. And then finally in this list, we have Yimi Garcia. Yimi is a veteran. I actually played in the Fall League with him in 2013, which was 11 years ago. He is sitting on 10 years of service time. And the biggest thing with Yimi is his velocity is up and consistent this year, and he is missing bats and making guys uncomfortable. So his statistics as they stand as of today, 0.68 ERA, 13 games, 13.1 innings pitched, 16 strikeouts, and a .53 whip. So he's walking nobody, and he's giving up no hits. That is a great sign. One red flag, though, unfortunately. His ground ball percentage is he's on the bottom 2% of the league. Hard hit percentage, bottom 13% of the league. And barrel percentage, bottom 15% of the league. So when he's giving up hits, they're hit really hard, and they're tending to be homers. But he's not doing that very much. And the 99% chase rate is a good sign. He is using the edges really well. He is averaging 97 miles an hour, 96.4 on his fastball, which is top 12% in the league. Expected batting average, expected ERA, both 98 and 97th percentile. This screams big moment, go get a strikeout type of guy to me. And he's throwing 6 pitches. He's been using his four seam 32% of the time, his sinker 25% of the time, his sweeper 17.1% of the time, his curveball 16.6% of the time, his slider 5.3% of the time rather, and his changeup 3.7% of the time. So he is not scared to try stuff. He's not scared to use all of his pitches, and for a reliever to have 6 pitches, all of which he can throw for strikes, is pretty crazy. But he has become a huge weapon for them. He's got a career 105 whip. He's been a very good pitcher for a very long time, but this year he has shown what he can do at 33 years old, which is just damn impressive. To throw 97 miles an hour still is something that I wish I could have done. It'll be interesting to see what happens to him at the trade deadline, because I am not confident that the Blue Jays are going to be in a position to not sell. So Yimi Garcia would be a big pickup for someone, I think, as I believe, and I'm not sure about this, and I could look it up, but I'm not going to because I'm recording the show. I believe he is a free agent after this year. Those are my top 5 relievers that are not being talked about enough. Go check them out, put them on your fantasy team, or don't, but just make sure you're giving those guys love, because middle relievers are people too. And now for our final subject of the day, and that is catcher's interference and the role that it is playing in baseball right now. I feel like, just anecdotally, we've had quite a few more catcher interference calls than we would have had in the past. It feels that way anyway. But I was also pretty interested in finding out if that's true or not. Like, is that really happening? So this conversation was actually prompted. We were talking about it a lot before our Rates and Barrels pod last Friday, and we were talking a lot about Wilson Contreras going down after being hit by the bat on a swing from JD Martinez. Now, JD Martinez has something we call a deep swing. He lets the ball get really deep into the zone before he swings because his power is to kind of right center field. So this is something that he naturally does. Like his swing path is a little bit deeper in that box than other guys. So there's been times where he's hit gloves before. It's not all the time. He's not like leading the league, but it has happened from time to time, and that's just naturally how he swings. There's no problem with it. But Wilson got way in there, and we got a left arm getting hit directly with the bat on the forward swing, breaking his arm. Now, suddenly, this is a conversation that has been thrust into the front of baseball discourse because someone got hurt and hurt pretty badly. And this is super interesting to me. Here's how the stat has changed. As of right now, we are at a .06 catcher interferences per game, .06 per game. Now, that sounds like a really, really low number. However, the difference is from 2000 to 2010, it was .007, 1/10 of the rate it is at today. Now, there's a health thing to talk about here. It's getting guys hurt and whatever, and that's the main point of the conversation. But the biggest thing that happens on these is catchers getting errors and runners getting to move up or getting to be safe for free. Like it's free hits, free base runners. It hurts pitchers, but it also hurts defensive players and it hurts the catcher. Yes, we had someone get hurt, but most of the time it's just like something it's one of those things that's very avoidable that can hurt a team in a drastic way. And it's happening more and more often. You do not want to get one of these goofy little interference calls in a big spot that maybe transitions into a game or translates into a run scoring and the changing of the outcomes here. Like, it's kind of crazy. And we were asking, why? Like, why is this suddenly happening? What, the boxes moved? What's going on? And it's a combination of two things. And I think I'm going to go a little bit of a deeper dive into this and talk a lot more about specific situations, effects on games later. But now it's two main things that we think are the culprits or that people are thinking the culprits. So expect there to be a lot of research done on this here in the coming weeks and months because it's super interesting and it's something that people are starting to notice now. But it's the two main things are this. Hitters are basically eliminating the backside of that box. So the batter's box is supposed to be the limit of where you can go, but they're limiting the backside to give themselves just a smidge more time to make a decision on a ball. And that's mostly because the harder guys throw, the deeper in the box you get. And it's becoming pretty universally known that moving in the box isn't a feasible thing to do anymore because velos on every single pitch have gone up so much and it's just a losing proposition. So that line is getting erased. So guys are taking that extra centimeter, they're taking that little extra inch on the back. So they're getting a little bit of closer to the catcher naturally. Combine that with the fact that catchers have been incentivized to receive pitches really well and steal strikes. The earlier you catch the ball, especially if it's going from being a strike to a ball, a chase pitch, if you will, the sooner you catch it, the better the chance you catch it while it was in the zone. So guys are inching up. So as hitters inch back, catchers are inching up. And now we're seeing gloves getting hit constantly. It's so funny. Literally right before I went to record this, Ryan Jeffers of the Twins got an interference call because he was trying to grab a low strike, and it was an emergency swing trying to foul it off, and it hit the glove. So he was trying to get an advantage. The hitter was trying to get an advantage, and the advantage goes to the hitter because that is how baseball is built, which, I don't really care either way. I just don't think guys need to be getting hit on their hands this much. And so how do you change it? Well, don't be surprised if we start seeing some enforcement of catcher's box, of the hitter's box, of maybe a possible adjustment to what interference is, and what maybe a bigger look on hitters and whether or not they're doing things, they're trying to hit the glove. They're trying to do these things because it's turning out that some guys are closer than others. Some guys are getting more of these than other people, and there might be an advantage there. So pay attention if you're watching baseball here in the next few weeks. Pay attention to how the catchers are setting up, how they're receiving the ball. I think there's also correlation here with how often we're seeing the outside part of the plate being expanded by umpires. Another interesting thing to keep in mind by that, why that concept's happening is one, catchers are moving up, so they actually it is working that catching the ball slightly earlier, they're thinking they're catching the edges more than they are, and so more of those pitches are being called. You combine that with the fact that umpires have, over the last 5 years or so, slowly moved their bodies where they set up closer to the hitter and more into that lane on the hitter side of the catcher to avoid getting hit on a backswing or a foul ball straight into the mask, which they're protecting themselves as well. But unfortunately, what you do is sacrifice some of your sight to the outer part of the plate. So that's kind of a vulnerable spot for umpires to see, and catchers are going out and trying to abuse that a little bit and take advantage of it. And so far, I think we've seen that work pretty well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things get balanced, but it seems like we found maybe a bug or an exploit in the game that might get addressed here the more that it gets talked about in the public discussion and in the media. So interesting. Check it out. I love it when things like this come up. I don't want anyone to get hurt, obviously, but it's just an interesting case study to see how these things are changing over time, and then to see how quickly the league adjusts. Guys, check out the Discord if you are interested and you want to participate in this show. I am trying to get into the Discord more and more. It is something that has proven to be hard for me to do with so many moving pieces and so many videos being edited and things, but I'm currently adding people to the team. We're getting these things out more regularly, and I want to hear from you. So go to the Mayday channel in my Discord. That is in the show notes below, and I would love to hear from you. And also, you can always hit me up on Twitter. I am Trevor May. I'm always there. I'm always around, and I love to hear you guys' feedback. And I'll see you next time on the Mayday podcast.